So let's go through learning target 1.2.3, which is to write literal equations. This process is super similar to writing linear equations, except that we're going to have a lot more variables in the literal ones. So first let's read and figure out what's going on. So it says Tony is trying to determine a cause for the number of friends a person has. He thinks that to find this, you can take the number of pets they have, multiply by the number of shows they have watched on Netflix, and then divide that quantity by the hours they spend studying every week. Write an equation to represent this relationship. So now I want to go back through and I want to underline everything that I think is important. So first it says that Tony's trying to determine a cause for the number of friends a person has. So number of friends is going to be what we're trying to find. So I'm going to use an F to represent that one. Then he says to find this, you can take the number of pets they have. That's something else that we don't know. So let's use a variable for here. And I'm going to use P. And multiply by the number of shows they have watched on Netflix. We don't know that either, so I'm going to use a variable S. Finally, it says to divide that quantity by the hours they spend studying every week. We don't know that either, so I'm going to use an H there. Once I have all of my variables, then I can go back through and figure out how they are actually related. So first things first is he's trying to figure out the number of friends a person has. So we're going to have F equals. And once I use something, I typically like to cross it out so I know that I've used it. Then it says to find this, you take the number of pets. So I'm just going to write down P. And multiply by the number of shows. If I'm multiplying two things, I could put the dot in between, but that's just extra information. It ends up being kind of messy. So typically mathematicians just have two things pushed together. So I'm going to put the S right next to the P. And we know that when two things are squished together, that means multiplication. And then it says, and then divide that quantity by the hours. So one thing I do want to point out is it says, and then. And the word then should make us think parentheses. And so I'm going to throw some parentheses around my P and S before I move on. What that does is it makes sure that we do that step first, and then we move on to the next step. So it says we divide that quantity by the hours they spend. So some of you probably think that we should do this, but as we kind of start getting a little bit further into our math knowledge, we know that the division symbol is kind of messy and not as clean and neat as we would like. So what we really want to do is we want to use the fraction bar for division. So I'm going to do divide by H like this. So now I think I've used everything. I just want to quick make sure that this makes sense. So this says the number of friends that we have is equal to the number of pets times the number of shows divided by the hours studying, which is exactly what he said. The one thing I will note is you don't truly need these parentheses because the fraction bar already acts like parentheses. So you could erase them if you wanted a little bit less in your equation. I'm just going to keep them on because I don't think it hurts anything to keep them there. So you could have this, or you could have it without the parentheses.